I'm continuing to read from this book by Sister Emmanuel, which was an interview that she did with Maria Simma. It is parallel to the book I read from Nikki Eltz, but there are some new questions in here. Today is part 3 of the book, and I'm starting with her chapter 4, which is what Maria Simma, who received messages from the souls in purgatory, said about to her question about offering a mass. Maria, can you tell us what are the most effective means to help deliver the souls from purgatory? Maria states, the most efficient means is the Mass. Why the Mass? Because it is Christ who offers himself out of love for us. It is the offering of Christ himself to God, the most beautiful offering. The priest is God's representative, but it is God himself who offers himself and sacrifices himself for us. The efficacy of the Mass for the deceased is even greater for those who attached great value to the Mass during their lives. If they attended Mass and prayed with all their hearts, if they went to Mass on weekdays, according to their time available, they draw great profit from Masses celebrated for them. Here, one harvests what one has sown. Sister Emmanuel writes that a soul in purgatory sees very clearly on the day of his funeral if we really pray for him or if we have simply made an act of presence to show we are there. The poor souls also say that tears are no good to them, only prayer. Often they complain that people go to a funeral without addressing a single prayer to God while shedding many tears. This is useless. Concerning the Mass, here's a beautiful example given by the holy cure of Ars in France to his parishioners. He told them this: "My children, a good priest had the unhappiness to lose a friend he cherished greatly, and so he prayed very much for the repose of his soul. One day God made known to him that his friend was in purgatory, and he suffered greatly. The holy priest believed that he could do no better than to offer the holy sacrifice of the Mass for his dear friend who had died. At the moment of the consecration, he took the host between his fingers and said, 'Holy Eternal Father, let us make an exchange. You hold the soul of my friend who is in purgatory, and I hold the body of your son in my hands. Well, good and merciful Father, deliver my friend, and I shall offer your son with all the merits of his death and passion.' The request was answered. In fact, at the moment of the elevation, he saw the soul of his friend shining in glory, rising to heaven. God had accepted the deal." Wow. The power in the Mass, the power that we here on earth have for those in purgatory is becoming so much more clear to me every time I read these things. People who lived a very sinful life and yet died trying to save someone else's go straight to heaven, skipping purgatory because of that one act. A priest offers a deal to God who God could say, "You're holding my son's hand anyway. You're holding him in your hands. I don't owe you anything." And yet he did, out of the priest's love and faith for his friend. Take advantage of God's great mercy for yourself, for your family members, living and deceased, to bless their souls, because it sure seems like God is doing anything he can to say, "Okay, yeah, I'll take that deal," because he loves us so much. Well, let me continue reading. The request was answered. In fact, at the moment of the elevation, he saw the soul of his friend shining in glory, rising to heaven. God had accepted the deal. My children, when we want to deliver from purgatory a soul dear to us, let us do the same. Let us offer to God through the holy sacrifice his beloved Son with all the merits of his passion and death. He will not be able to refuse us anything. Chapter 5. Don't waste your earthly sufferings. There's another means very powerful to help the poor souls: the offering of our sacrifices, our penance, such as fasting, renunciations, etc. and of course, involuntary suffering like illness or mourning. Sister asks Maria, Maria, you have been invited many times to suffer for the poor souls in order to deliver them. Can you tell us what you have experienced and undergone during these times? Maria says, the first time the soul asked me if I wouldn't mind suffering for 3 hours in my body for her, and that afterwards I would resume working. I said to myself, if it will all be over after 3 hours, I will accept it. During these 3 hours, I had the impression that they lasted 3 days. It was so painful. But at the end, I looked at my watch and I saw that it had only lasted 3 hours. The soul told me that by accepting that suffering with love for 3 hours, I had saved her 20 years of purgatory. Sister asks, yes, Maria, but why did you suffer for only 3 hours to avoid 20 years of purgatory? What did your sufferings have that were worth more? Maria says, it is because suffering on earth does not have the same value. On earth, when we suffer, we can grow in love, we can gain merits, which is not the case with the suffering in purgatory. In purgatory, the suffering serve only to purify us from sin. On earth, we have all the graces, we have the freedom to choose. All this is so encouraging because it gives an extraordinary meaning to our sufferings. The suffering which is offered voluntary or involuntary, even the smallest sacrifices we can make, suffering of sickness, mourning, disappointments, if we live them with patience, if we welcome them in humility, these sufferings can have an inconceivable power to help souls. The best thing to do, Maria tells us, is to unite our suffering to those of Jesus by placing them in the hands of Mary. She is the one who knows best how to use them, since often we ourselves do not know the most urgent needs around us. All this, of course, Mary will give back to us at the hour of our death. You see, this suffering offered will be our most precious treasures in the other world. We must remind each other of this and encourage each other when we suffer. I pray this is blessing you. I have learned so much more how to suffer and how to suffer with grace because of what I'm learning from the poor souls. Suffering's not such a bad thing when you think about the fact that it can have a value and an efficacy in heaven or purgatory for others. Now, some people have said to me, well, when I suffer, when I cry, does that mean I'm not suffering or offering it up? I'm like, just the sight of tears does not make the suffering go away, but actually proves the fact that you are suffering. So don't let your tears make it seem as if you are not willingly giving your suffering to God. He understands. I'm Dr. Christine Bacon. Thanks for listening to this Bacon Bit. And as always, remember to live your life sunny side up.